Okay, the reason I want to talk about tolerance is because I want to, it irritates me to hear people talk about tolerating other people, tolerating religious belief, or tolerating sexual preference, tolerating the neighbor. When in actuality, to tolerate something means that you endure it. You put up with it. Now, to endure something means that you are experiencing something that you would rather not experience. Now, if you take that and make it applicable to people, what you're actually saying is that you would rather not have that experience with them, which in essence is degrading them, is a form of degradation, I should say. And it's a non-recognition of their personhood, or the deity, I should say. And I want to begin to talk about that as well more frequently, about the deity of us. And I'm going to differentiate in a few minutes between that and the Bible. I was thinking, what really pushed me to deal with it is when I heard people talk about tolerating Islam. Islam simply means to submit or submission, and Muslim means to surrender. So you're talking about tolerating submission. And when you look at the meaning of Islam versus the meaning of Christianity or Judaism, you will find a more realistic understanding. Because if I were to ask, what does the word Christian mean, what kind of answer would I get? You see? Who want to answer that?
I don't.
I mean, what does that mean?
Somebody who believes in Christ.
Somebody, but see, you can't use the word, the definition of the word. You can't do that. That's what they told me in school.
That's what they were saying.
Yeah. So what would Bible mean say?
What is a Christian?
What does Christian mean? You can turn that fan off if you want to. Okay.
Well, it means having the qualities. What it means is having the qualities of the Messiah, but that's not what people.
Right. And you see the struggle with that? What does Judaism mean?
People of righteousness, Jews, people of
Well,
grace.
see, first of all, there's no such thing as Jewish, as a Jew, J-E-W, because it's not in the Bible. It's Judah. Every place that's translated Jew is actually should be translated as Judah. So that's why it's called Judaism. So if it's Judaism, then it would have to come from the word Judah, would it not? And what does Judah mean?
Grace.
That's what I was thinking, praise. So it's praiseism. So when we start talking about what the people who primarily talk about tolerance are not Jews. They're not Muslims. I wonder what's that. Christians are the ones who talk about tolerating people.
And to go further, when you say tolerate, it's almost as that thing. You're dealing with it, but you still look at that thing as being deplorable or despicable, but you're basically giving into and saying, I will deal with it.
I'm going to deal with it. You don't want to, but I will. Right.
It's definitely a burden upon yourself to be associated with it from any standpoint.
And what that whole concept of tolerance does, it gives you an out to doing what you need to do, and that is recognizing the reason that person is, you're experiencing that person or that event. If it's someone who you feel like creates a burden for you, why is it a burden? Where does it come? Where's that coming from? Get to know the person. You know, get to know the people. Get to know what's going on, what makes them tick. Get to know them. When we talk about the tolerating people who have different sexual preferences than we have, you get to know the person as opposed to thinking about a label. Because what we're actually doing, we're actually labeling people. Now I'm going to show you something that's really, really crazy when you think about it. If you say there's a thing as radical Islam, you're saying that there's something as radical submission. Because that's what Islam means. That makes no sense. So we have to step back from this and see the direction that we need to go in relationship to Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, and Buddhism. Which are the 5 major religions on earth. And when we step back from it, what we began to see is that none of the people who were I can't say found because that's not it, who were the leaders in these different religions, none of them deified themselves. None of them. None of them made reference to themselves as being God the Creator. None of them. Not one, not Jesus, not Buddha, none of them. Muhammad, none of them. As a matter of fact, one of the things that Muhammad spoke against was the whole concept of deifying the man, Jesus. Even when we talk about Elohim, right? Volume a little bit louder. Can you get it? Even when we talk about Elohim, we are not talking about the physical body. We're talking about the spiritual reality of who we are, right? Now, if we begin to think in terms of tolerating people, then, or tolerating a religion, then we don't ever get to understand or to know what the foundations of it. What do people really believe? If I were to ask right now, anyone who makes reference to Islam as being, radical Islamists, no, they couldn't tell me what they believe. Is it? Do you know what they believe? That's different than what we believe. You see where I'm coming from? So
the tolerance then is our excuse not to get closer. We just that's more like lip service of, okay, I'll do this because I have to. But the tolerance doesn't go beyond enduring or bearing to get to establishing, say, like if I have an intolerant, if I'm trying to be tolerant of a person whose religion is Islam, I will do the necessities of, how are you doing, blah, 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 but I never will get to know them as an individual person.
Yeah, right.
Not only that, but tolerance also says that the person, you still don't think the person is on your level. So even though you're accepting them, they are inferior to you. Because you cannot tolerate something that you look at as being an evil. That's not possible. There's something about it that you really, really just detest.
But you don't want to say you detest it.
Mm-hmm.
So you say, I put up with it. Which is, again, you deny their personhood.
And when you say you're putting up with it, it's as if I'm going to extend you, or whatever that thing is that you're tolerating, almost a favor. Like, I'm not supposed to, I'm not required to, you're not worthy of it, but I'm going to extend myself out to accept you or it, even though you or it is not
you're
worthy.
less than I am.
Yes.
Now think about it, less than I am. You hear that?
Yeah.
And to even think about somebody being less than I am. I mean, that we make these spiritual statements that are real, but we give them definitions that are convenient to us, conducive to what we think of what we believe, as opposed to what they really mean. To think that someone is less than you are is no different than thinking that they are less than I am. And I am is the I am. So we have to make, we have to get to a place where we actually, okay, that's great, the volume is. We have to get to a place where we can deal with people on the basis of who they are, as opposed to who we think they are. And regardless of the Holy Book, all of them have been influenced. This is one of the things that we don't talk enough about. And the one thing that we don't talk enough about is that some men came together and decided what the Bible was going to consist of. As opposed to combining all the books that were available that were presented as the words that came from Jesus, or the words that were inspired by God. They chose the books that they wanted to be in the scriptures. And the ones that they chose were the ones that were the least mystic books. That's what they chose. The ones that deal with mysticism, they did not. As a matter of fact, they did not even choose all the books that Peter wrote. Because, you got 1st and 2nd Peter, 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, 1st, 2nd Peter. Actually, Peter wrote 5 books. And, that should have been included. And one of them that I was perusing is just very mystical. So they made these decisions, Book of James. They made these decisions to do that. And the idea of that those decisions being made ought to cause us pause. Why was it done? So where do we get the rest of the information from if this is all that's there? And I don't mean all to minimize it. If they didn't include everything.
At the very least, there is an arrogance there. Just assuming that if you don't understand it, it's not worth being included.
But that wasn't it.
Worse,
That wasn't it.
It was an attempt to control
That's it.
how people perceive.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it. See, it had nothing to do with I don't understand it. It had more to do with I do understand it. But if we allow this to be disseminated, or if we allow people to see what's really here, then their approach would be different. In other words, there would not have been any, the Papal States would not have existed. The Vatican would not have been able to control most of the world during that period, if that had not taken place. Now, keep this in mind, that it was Muhammad who protected the Christians from the Christians. In other words, it was Muhammad who protected the Christians from the Catholics during the Crusades. You see, he protected the Catholics and the Jews who were in Spain during that period when you either believe or die. Now, this is the other thing. Adversaries always, thank you, babe. Adversaries always do one thing. Adversaries always project on you what they're actually doing or did. Let me show you what I'm saying. There is a projection that Muslims want to force people to believe what they believe. Now, there are some who do, but that's not the basic, that's not what's in the book, the Quran. It's not there. It's quite the contrary. The only thing that Muslims were opposed to in the areas where they had control was polytheism. That's the only thing that they, but everybody else were allowed to believe what they wanted to believe and to worship the way they chose to worship. So it wasn't tolerance. It was recognizing the humanity of those people, and it was also recognizing that they had a right to worship. They had a right to the individual God. He never saw the God of Israel or the God of Christianity any different than he saw the God of Islam. It's just different language. And I'm not sitting here saying that Islam is the way to go or Christianity. None of them. I'm just stating some facts here. And it was the Catholics who sought to conquer and to force people to believe. But they project that to Islam now, when that was not the case. As a matter of fact, as I said earlier, quite the contrary. Even when you look at Buddha, he never said that he was a god. But the West confers that on him. Buddha is, they claim Buddha to be a god. That's not true. He was an enlightened man. And that's how he projected himself, and that's how the believers who understand Buddhism see him. He saw mankind as being no different than he was. And when we look at the concept of Christianity, we begin to note that all these bodies or crosses hanging around, they are deifying the material, which is the body. They're saying that when you say that Jesus was God in the flesh, the body, are you saying that the body was God? Or are you saying that he embodied the flesh? You see the difference? Because if you're saying that the flesh was God because Jesus was there, was in it, then you are deifying the material. And that has to change. This is what I see. I see that Hinduism and Buddhism, well, Hinduism is polytheistic, but I see Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam, I see these religions as doing different things. If you look at Hinduism, polytheism, Buddhism is an enlightened, anyone can be enlightened through meditation and focus. And you look at Christianity, the true nature of Christianity, I want to say, is Jesus, Yeshua, showing people how they can be as they were created to be. And then when you look at Muhammad, you see someone who does not make mention of the idea that we were created to be Elohim, but at the same time, the desire that he had was to pull Judaism, Christianity, and Islam together under one head. That was his desire, not through force, not through coercion, but by, as he puts it, enlightenment, by showing them the light. You got a question? By showing them the light. Now, the thing that's missing here is that Jesus made reference to Psalms 82, but he did not explain it. When he said, is it not written that I say ye are gods? He made reference to Psalm 82, but he didn't explain it. Muhammad, not only, well, to a degree he ignored it or was not aware of it because of the him not having, I guess, read that 82nd Psalm that's in the Old Testament. So someone has to step up to do the next, to carry it to the next place of understanding along this journey. And the next place of understanding along the journey is to understand what's in the 8th Psalm and the 82nd Psalm. I think it's the 8th Psalm that says, what is man that thou art mindful of him? I think that's it. To know what's in those, what they really mean. Thou hast made him a little lower than the angels, which it actually says in reality, he has actually diminished himself. That's what it says if you look at the little translation of it. What is man that thou art mindful of him? He diminished himself. So, is anybody at the 8th Psalm? Yeah. He diminished it. So if he diminished himself, and when Jesus came, he made reference to this man being God, but didn't explain it. But his actions pointed to it. And when Islam did not deal with it in that manner, but felt like you could be one with God after death. Now it's time for someone to step up to the plate and begin to talk about what these Psalms mean. If man, are you at the Psalm? Okay, the section that says that what is man that thou art mindful of him? Thou hast made him a little lower than the angels. What's the next verse?
Psalms 4, and then 5 is, for thou hast made him a little lower than the angels and crowned with glory and honor, made him to have dominion over the works of thy hands, put all things under his feet.
You see? This is talking about him being crowned with wisdom and balance and having authority over everything. And when you look at it, I think the last verse talks about having authority over the pathways of the sea. Does it not?
Still on 82?
That's right.
I'm on 8.
The birds, 8, fowl of the air, fish of the sea, whatsoever passes through the paths of the sea.
Whatsoever passes through the path. So when you look at that, what other paths? That this has to be spiritual, because everything is spiritual. So not only does he, when you establish dominion over the material, you begin to see who you are. But as long as you allow the material to have dominion over you, you can't see who you are. You remain material. How does the material have control over you? You'd rather be at your job than to be somewhere being enlightened. You won't miss the job. You think that your intellect is enough. You cannot navigate this journey with it being intellectual. You can't do it being philosophical. You have to do it being spiritual. And your desire to be spiritual is above everything else. So somebody has to step up to the plate and say, you know what? I'm not saying that they were wrong, but I am saying that they left out this section of who we are and how we are to strive towards being who we are, and having striven to be who we are, we now are transformed into the spiritual, as was Enoch, as was Jesus, as was Moses, etc. So I suppose what I'm trying to get you to see is that tolerance breeds ignorance. Tolerance breeds ignorance, but desire to understand births wisdom. So my desire to understand what other people believe, be they Christian or whatever, gives me opportunity to receive wisdom from the Creator, so that I can see more clearly who these proponents of these different religions are. And when you look at the whole concept of whether it be Islam or Christianity, both of them are material in the form that they exist right now. They're material. When in actuality, they're supposed to be spiritual. So when we stop tolerating people and start appreciating them for who they are, then we will get to the place where we are no longer putting people in categories and tolerating them. And once we do that, that puts us back, or that puts us in a place of beginning. Every single time that you go to beginning, you end up at the same place. And that is, in the beginning was the Word. So beginning always creates wisdom. Always.
What about this business of hating the sin and loving the sinner?
So again.
So what about this business of hating the sin, loving the sinner?
The idea of hating sin, it depends on the hate you're talking about. Because when Jesus says that you have to hate your father and your mother, right? Well, he was not talking about hate them in terms of brutally or whatever. The terminology, what he was doing, he was saying your desire for enlightenment must be so great until when it appears next to your desire for your parents, it looks like hate. That it was a comparison like that being made. Now, when the scripture speaks of hate, it's primarily talking about detesting the darkness. What it actually does, if someone hates you, then what it brings to the surface something that you need to deal with. See, whether someone hates you or loves you, it's always about you looking in the mirror to find out what it is in you that brought that about. When we talk about hate, we talk about staying away from somebody. We talk about doing them harm. That's not the reference, that's not the understanding. Do you have your, oh boy, I forgot that foot's wrong. Oh God. That I'm tolerating this pain in this.
Where you got pain at?
I sprung my foot, and it still acting crazy right now. Okay, hate talks about filtering, to filter something or to strain it. So when he's talking, when you filter something, you are taking something out.
See, I'm
So-
thinking about it from the perspective of, you've heard the phrase, right?
Yeah, oh
Talking
yes,
about?
oh yes, I've used
They're
it.
usually talking about an alcoholic or a gay person
Yeah.
or something like that.
And what, see, can I deal with those parallel to what they should mean and what they actually mean? When someone says, hate the sin but love the person, what they should be meaning is that strain the sin, filter the sin through enlightenment. And that brings order to that person's life. Because sin is talks about being entangled in something. What it's actually saying is, when they say hate the sin but love the sinner, they actually hate the person. Because if you're not hating the person, then why is it that you are always speaking in derogatory terms in reference to the people who you say hate the sin but love the person?
Are we really in a position to say what entangles someone else?
No. We're not in that position to say it, but we're in a position to see it sometimes. See, if I see your entanglement, usually I don't deal with it unless you bring it to me. But if I see it destroying you, then I'll speak to you concerning it. But I don't use it to badger you, or I don't use it to dehumanize you. I don't use it to make you feel like I'm the deity and you the dummy. Sure.
I was just thinking in the way that's the way it's used or the way it actually plays out, it actually causes more harm than helping them, because it either the entanglement stays or they become entangled even more. Because if you tell someone who's an alcoholic, a functional alcoholic or whatever, or someone who is lesbian, if you come at them that way, all of a sudden you've made them a lesser of a person, so you have dehumanized them. However, additionally, even if they stop that particular action that they're doing, the physical action, the entanglement still exists. They are just not doing it because this has basically been something that has been demonized and I can't do. But as far as that being corrected or the urge of it being taken out of their body, even if that entanglement has moved something else, the root of the problem has not been solved, versus if there is a genuine concern about the well-being and what's great for that person, not because you look at them doing something that you don't like or that you don't agree with and just wanting the best for that person, that will be far more actually effective.
When the way we use hate also destroys us.
Yes.
Because most of us taught that you don't hate anybody. You don't even use that word because it's such a dangerous word to use. When we use it, we're talking about dehumanization as opposed to filtering. And for years, I couldn't understand what Jesus could have possibly meant when he was talking about hating your father and your mother. But when wisdom began to come on the scene, I could see what he was actually saying. There's another term that's used. I don't know whether you heard it or not, but my grandmother used to say all the time, don't care has no home. If you say, I don't care has no home. And I never understood what that meant. And when I would ask what it means, she would say, one day you'll know. And I took that to mean that she ain't know either. But the older I got, do me a favor, don't put that on the floor. Don't put it on the floor. What she was actually saying is, what from my perspective, is that if you don't have any care for anything, there is no resting place for you. Because if you don't care about the people around you, you don't care about anything about you, there's no resting place for you. You're supposed to care for everything. You're supposed to be, when it says, I'm sorry, when she says don't care, has no home, that's what she's saying. You're totally, what? You're chaotic because there's no balance in your life. Now, back to Janice's, the hate thing. That is another way of saying that you tolerate people. I'm just putting up with you. I don't want to.
There's so much judgment in that phrase, and I just even hearing or thinking about it, it feels like a creation of separation between you and that other person, like you're just in this high place that can determine what about them is objectionable and what about them is lovable.
And the other thing is that when you look at that from perspective, when you put it in perspective, you see that when you hate somebody, not only are you elevating yourself, but you are desiring awful things to happen to them. And even if you look at it for what it means, it's not a bad thing. To strain or to filter. Hate to sin. Strain and filter entanglement. It's not a bad thing. But that's not what they mean. Because in order for you to filter through the sin or the entanglement, you may need some help.
Water has, when you really, water has sediment in it, and sometimes you have to strain away and filter stuff to get to pure water, just like well drillers. They go down so deep and they have to go through sand. They have to, and they put a strainer down there to filter to filter out the sand so that what comes back up is pure water. And so the true meaning of it is strain away those things. In other words, don't see the person as that thing, but strain away all of that stuff, the barriers, the gunk, whatever, labels, whatever, so that you can see beyond the entanglements.
You know what Bob just saw when you said that?
No.
It has nothing to do with the other person. If you filter that stuff away, you don't see anything but purity. So yeah, right. So you don't feel, you don't dehumanize them. That's what I saw.
So is that the sty in the eye concept?
I don't know. Is it?
What was the question?
Sty and
The sty in the eye, where it says, take out the sty that's in your own eye before you look at
It's
the
a little
one
bit
in
more
somebody
than that,
else's.
I think. The style seems to be more, I mean, you can see it more physically, although it's a spiritual thing, but when you think about a style, you see it as a barrier. But when you think about the word hate, or the word joy, or the word love, they are more intangible kinds of things that you can't really wrap a physical representation of into a style or into something. So I see it as a little bit deeper than just that.
I can see that because the thing that you are seeing is you. Because you don't know what pain looks like. What does depression look like? Your spirit, when you feel like you're overwhelmed by something that you cannot deal with, you get depressed before your body reflects it, but you can't see it. So when we talk about hate, straining, look through, as Barbara said, those barriers, and see the person, see the light. Guess what? They may have to go through that in order for them to see the light. nothing is designed to destroy you. Because even when Barbara talked about the sand is not destroyed. It's left in place. And you know why it's left in place? It's left in place to filter more water. That's why it's left in place.
Because the more water that passes through that sand, the purer the water.
Yes.
The more sand, I'm sorry.
The more
purer
sand, the purer the water. So the sand stays there.
So I was listening when Barbara was talking about filtering out and getting rid of the barriers, and it sounds so much like you're filtering out your own prejudices and your own ideas that keep you separated from the other person. It doesn't seem like it has a whole lot to do with filtering out what's going on with them.
It doesn't. It's all about you. It's about you because you can't filter out what's going on with them. They have to do it. So when we began to move ourselves away from the prejudice and talk openly about homosexuality and what it means in the scriptures, we began to see a greater acceptance. And I don't like that word acceptance because it in itself, when you talk about accepting a person, that's dehumanizing. Yeah, so I don't like that word. So for lack of a better term, when we began talking about, embrace. That's a better word. Yeah, when we began to talk about the whole concept of Jesus and Mary being married, look what happens. When we embraced it, we gave birth, and the birth came through to find that the scroll that alludes to that. So when we talk about in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was Elohim. And the Word was with Elohim, and Elohim is the Word. So what it's actually saying, whatever you are entangled with, that's what you become in your mind. Addict. Rapist. You see what I'm talking about? Labels. But no one was created to be either one of those.
And to actually really call yourself that is a lie if you're really I am. I mean, that may have been something you did. That may have been something that occurred. But that's not who I am. The other thing, the phrase, Janice, another way to look at it from my perspective is that when you use that phrase, hate the sin, love the person, it's like it's a phrase that I'm hiding behind. Because if you look at it, there's two parts. The love the person part is the second part. And that ought to be automatic anyway if you see the deity that person is. So it's like you do have to get through the barrier of what's in you in order to see the deity that the person is. So it's not about really the person that you're trying to love. It's about you. It really is. I got to filter out and I got to strain the impurities that prevent me from seeing the deity in that person. Because I don't see it doesn't mean that it's not there.
While you were talking, I was looking at something. Suppose then that, and I'm gonna see if I can tie this in. I think I see something here. Suppose that first chapter reads differently than what it was translated.
First chapter, where are you?
First John. John, the first chapter, I'm sorry. Suppose, are you there yet?
Yes.
Suppose it reads, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Indeed, the Word is God. And it could just as easily been translated with indeed instead of and thee, which put emphasis on the fact that it will read that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was Elohim, the Word was with Elohim, and indeed, the Word is Elohim.
Well, if you look at the Aramaic, that word with does mean so many different things. Just like a word like in
Yeah.
or of can mean so many different things. So,
So if it's translated that way, then what it's actually saying is, if it's saying that Elohim is the Word, right? And you are Elohim, then it's saying you are the Word. So in order for you to get to that place where you are, where you embrace that entirely, you have to do some filtering. And the filtering that you do, as Janice stated, you filter out your prejudice, your preconceived ideas about what you see, about other people's experiences. You filter all of that out. And if you're looking at someone who has a sexual preference or someone who's addicted to something, if you look at that from a different perspective, then you begin to see that when you filter those prejudices out of you, it makes you pure. Now you become the Word, so you can speak to their issues and help them overcome. Can you see that? You can't do it if you're prejudiced. And if anyone on the phone or on the broadcast have any question, either type it in the box or just raise the question or make the statement. Either one. Go ahead, Bob.
I was going to just just put thoughts, concepts, and ideas of the Creator in the place of the Word. And I am a thought before I became dense enough to manifest in the physical, but who I really am is more than the body anyway. So if in the beginning was the thoughts, the concepts, and ideas, and those concepts, ideas, and thoughts were with God, I am with God. I was with God. I will be with God. I am a part of the Creator. So I am my daddy's child, my daddy's seed.
So if you are the Word, then the question becomes, what Word are you? You are any word that you need to be at the time that you need to be it. Have you heard people say, what you just said is right on time, I needed that? That's the nature of what I'm talking about.
Oh, I was just gonna say is that filtering process that has to take place, because without that filtering process taking place, it inhibits your ability to be that to that other person. So in actuality, by you not filtering yourself, you are doing the other person a disservice, so to speak.
Okay. Yeah. Say it again. I think I got it all.
Said, when we talk about this filtering process that we have to go through ourselves as far as prejudice and tolerance, trying to work our way into embracing, which is just accepting with love overpowering any type of judgment, etc. If we fail to do that, we are doing the person a disservice because we are not the Word to them at that time, because we are inhibiting ourselves from being the Word to them.
And go ahead.
Well, aren't we whatever word we create, whether negative or positive?
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost
Because we can be the negative side of that to them.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't filter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't filter. which then is automatically gonna end up being back at your intent.
When we do filter it, we're back to this, when we talked about Lord Jesus Christ, and we talked about the word Christ, we usually think of it, but really, as we follow that route back, it was to provide all that was needed, which means what you said, you know, whatever word, I mean, when we truly are walking in, experiencing and knowing who we are, then whatever word we provide is with the right motive, and so it is providing whatever an individual needs when it's needed. And so that is a manifestation of the embodiment of the nature, character of the Christ.
Let's look at that second verse. It says the same, which is making reference to the word, was in beginning with God. Because the is not there. The same was in beginning with God. If we look at beginning, that's the womb, right? Then the word was in the womb of beginning at the same time that God was. Is that not what you say? The word was in beginning, right? With God. Now this is my question. If the word was in beginning with God, then if we translate it literally, I mean, if we see it literally, then what we will be seeing is God here and the word over here, but both of them are in the same room. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. So if the reason that cannot be is because there would be no word for Elohim if they're separate. So it had to mean that they were intertwined with each other.
You saying intertwined from the Young's Literal Translation is actually, he was in the beginning with God, and so is actually making referencing word as a human.
Okay.
As if it's showing the singularity between them all.
So he's saying, well, you know what? It is human. Because if you go back, it takes you also back to he, himself, herself, he, she, or it, right? Now, it would have to be human. I'm not human, I'm sorry, alive.
Yeah.
Because
we're talking about a deity here, but of course, right. So lack of better word. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
No, I mean for the camera.
Oh, okay. It would have to be alive because it comes from life, doesn't it? And everything that's birthed from life is life. No different than if we look at it from the human perspective, a human births humans. You don't see sheep birthing humans. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen. We don't do the picture of this thing.
They're
right?
trying really hard for stuff like that.
But then it says that nothing came into existence except by him. So everything that came into existence by Elohim. Now, if everything came into existence by Elohim, and it is inextricably tied to the Word, with the Word, of course, being a living entity, then this would explain the how when we create our own worlds, our own environment, whether it be good, bad, or different. We create that because of how we think, how we speak, how we respond to what we feel, how we respond to various experiences. We are the ones who create that world. And if our intent is to bring into existence a world of light, then we encounter a whole lot of darkness. Because in order for that darkness to become light, or in order for us to bring that light into the earth, it simply means that we are bringing order to what we call darkness. Because when we read it from the manuscript there in Philadelphia, the scroll, it said, and the light